Hey, everybody, welcome in. So, tonight, this is going to be huge. Like, I'm so excited for this one. I got my best buddy Tim on here. I'm going to bring him on the screen in a minute. Tim and his dad, Bugsy, that's where the thumbnail comes from. We called his dad Bugsy. Was such a great man. He unfortunately left this earth a little over a year ago, and he was an awesome guy. And him and Tim was an only child, and Tim was his mom and dad's like the center of their universe, and they were determined to take care of their son and give him a great life. And they did a lot of cool stuff together. But what Tim and his dad did together was go to the card shows and get autographs and meet these guys and take pictures with them. And so tonight it's going to be really special. You need to watch this. What we're going to see tonight is the backbone of our hobby, period. The backbone isn't people buying $100,000 cards or, all these other things. And that I do too. The backbone is what goes on with families, with fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, moms and sons, all those things. This is the backbone. So what we're going to talk about tonight is so important, and you are going to be blown away by these stories. So I'm going to bring Tim on now. Tim.
Hey.
So just a little background. Last year at the National, Tim and I went for the first time, and Tim wanted to do it as kind of to honor his daddy. Your dad, you said, always wanted to go. And so we made the trip. Me and you went up to our first National. Show them your shirt, Tim. There you go. And we wore that the first day, or you did. And man, I loved your dad, and I know you did too. And your mom. And great man. But anyways, y'all did some really cool stuff together. And just to kind of tell you guys, as you're watching, Tim's dad wasn't just somebody to Tim. He was a huge influence on me, and I have patterned some of the ways that I parent my children after what I saw with Tim's daddy. So I've hogged a lot of this time, but we're going to go over some pretty cool cards. Tim, you got anything to add to that? You want to talk a little about your dad and what y'all did?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. So, hey, everybody. So yeah, thanks for the kind words, Tony. Tony and I go way back, best friends since probably what we were about 14.
Yeah, freshman in high school.
So close to 40 years. Me and you and your cousin and another one of our buddies, and my mom and dad. They both loved you to death.
Yeah, awesome.
But a little bit, I guess I'll start a little bit about how I got back into it, and then we'll get into the stories, and then I'll talk about kind of about how me and Dad got started. But as my dad, like Tony said, he passed away June of last year, and after he passed away, I had kind of gotten out of collecting. Really, I had gotten out of collecting, hadn't done anything in probably 35 years. But my dad still had all of his stuff. So I started going through his stuff. And then the Nationals coming up, and Tony and I start talking. And I think I mentioned to you, man, I don't know why Dad never went to the National, but he always wanted to go. And man, that thing's coming up in July. And me and you were talking about it. And then you send me the text, I just booked our flights.
That's right.
So I had told my wife, so my wife is helping me. My wife, Lee, is helping me go through all of Mom and Dad's stuff. And, we get rid of a bunch of stuff, and then we're kind of down to the baseball cards. And she said, what are you going to do with this stuff? And I said, well, I don't know. I know I've got, some items that are probably worth a little bit, and I'd like to get them graded. I think I need to get them graded. Grading started after we got out of it, but I had started looking into things enough to understand grading. So I took 10 or so cards to the National to get graded on site. And at the last minute, I thought, I'll take a couple of grand in cash with me just in case.
Yeah.
So go to the show. And that was the first card show that I had been to in probably 35 years, and was immediately it was awesome. The cards were just as awesome as they were 35 years ago, and the people were awesome and everybody was friendly, just like our crew of people that we were friends with 35 years ago. And I got my cards graded. So I came back with the graded cards. I also shot the entire $2,000, bought a bunch of cards, and come home and tell my wife. She's like, "Well, did you sell anything?" And I said, "No, actually, I didn't." I came back with even more. So I've kind of been hooked since then.
Yeah, and I remember that. She kind of thought you were grading them so you could sell them easier.
Yeah.
And then it happened just the opposite. So next thing I know, you're sending me all these eBay listings. We met Greg Miller together at the show, and then met some other guys at the YouTube event, and met Mookie at the show. And now me, you, and Greg and Mookie, we talk. And so you don't make videos, but that doesn't mean you're not a collector. So what I was saying a while ago, I've had, this collector spotlight series, and I'm having guys on here with cards that cost $100,000 and they're cool and they're great. And I'm going to keep doing that. And they show the story. They tell the story about getting the card. But this kind of stuff right here, again, I'm not degrading what you're about to do because there ain't no $100,000 cards, but the stuff you're about to talk about is priceless, man. Absolutely priceless. So in a few of these stories too, I was there. Yeah. So I don't know if we'll get to those tonight, but there's going to be more episodes after this one. Trust me. Yeah. So hang in there, watch this, dig in. You're going to love all this stuff.
All right. So first story was when I was, I really wish I'd give anything if I had kept a diary to be exact and to know, exactly when everything transpired. But I don't have a diary, so I'm working off of I guess some of the things I've actually tried to photo match with pictures of what I'm wearing to that particular time. So first story, it's somewhere around 1983. And as best I can remember, this was really before my dad and I were collecting cards. So I was on a vacation in Panama City Beach. Every year, me and my mom and my aunt and my cousins would go to Panama City Beach. Yeah. So then the men stayed here. My dad and my uncle, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. They stayed here and worked. So we're at the beach. We'd been at the beach all week. And of course, back in the 80s, you get the sports page out no matter where you are, and you read the box scores and the transactions. So I flipped over, reading the Panama City newspaper. And this was the last day that we were going to be at the beach. And there was an advertisement where Mickey Mantle was going to be at the Panama City Beach Mall at a store. I think the name of the store was Gaffer's, that's on that plastic ball. And he was going to be signing autographs. And I didn't have any autographs, anything at this point, but obviously I knew who Mickey Mantle was. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. So I'm like, okay, this is the last day at the beach. I can't drive. So let me ask mom. So I asked my mom, told her what I wanted to do. I said, do you think we could possibly go to the mall so I could get Mantle's autograph? And my mom immediately was like, well, sure, we can go. and I said, well, don't you need to ask my Aunt Rose? And she's like, well, yeah, but she's gonna be fine with it too. So we gave up they gave up their last day at the beach, and we were at Panama City Beach. So it was about a 30-minute drive or so into Panama City where the mall was. And I knew that I don't know if we had been to that mall before or not, but whatever, I didn't have anything to get autographed. I have anything. So they had a sporting goods store there. So I'm like, well, let's see if they have some baseballs. So go to the sporting goods store, and it's not an official league ball, but it's a little league ball. So I bought 2 of those and got him to sign both of those.
So did it cost you anything, or was it just an appearance fee?
No, it was nothing. You remember back then, there were always people, there was always some kind of promotion at a mall or a golf tournament or somewhere. Didn't cost a thing.
How big was the line?
The line was big. I
Okay.
remember there was a lot of people there. And of course, my mom and my aunt, they know who Mickey Mantle is. And
Yeah.
they were just goo-goo over him, talking about how good looking he was.
Yeah.
And I told Mom, I was so excited. And I told Mom, I said, I think we called, of course we would, no cell phone. So pick up the landline, called my dad that night. And I didn't tell him because I wanted to wait until I got home to show him in person. I told Mom, don't tell Dad that we got these autographs. So I put them, back in the box like baseballs come in, and cover it up with the tissue paper and get home. And man, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to show him. And I show them to him, and he opens them up, and he's like, what what's happening? And I told him, and it was really cool because Dad then would have been, well, Dad was born in 35. So the Yankees were in their heyday when he was.
How old were you?
I'm thinking then I was about 13.
Okay.
Something like that.
Right before I met you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was. I think it was right before we met Mantle at Service Merchandise.
Yeah.
When we went. But yeah, that's the first autograph that I remember getting. And I actually took it to there was a local show here back in February, and James Spence was here. And I thought, I'm going to get them to authenticate the balls, and which they did. And they asked if I wanted the ball stickered or not. And I said, no, I don't want them stickered. And they wound up putting a sticker on. They got mixed up and put a sticker on. But I just wanted the kids to have the paper one day. But everything in my collection, these two balls are my favorite. They're never going anywhere.
So after that, the bug bit you.
Yes.
And it bit your dad. Your dad saw the amazement in your eyes.
He did.
And it clicked with him. So
it did, but he wasn't, like I said, the timing, I'm not exactly sure, but he wasn't fully in yet.
Okay? Yeah. So let me give him a little background on your daddy. Okay. Much like my dad, no college degree. Mm-mm. I don't think your dad graduated high school. He had a GED.
He got his GED when he was 60, after he retired.
And he just went to work, man. Worked in the printing industry. And y'all had a modest little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. Mm-hmm. And you never wanted for anything. And so all these things we're talking about right here, y'all weren't rich.
No.
So when you're doing the things we're going to talk about, your dad and your mom were making sure they did what they had to do. And it wasn't, y'all weren't living extravagantly, but they were wanting you to have a good childhood, basically. Mm-hmm. So that's important to know, right? So I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, Mom and Dad they lived in one house their entire marriage. They were married 59 years. They lived in that one house. My dad said that he signed the contract on the house on the hood of a guy's car in front of it. I think he paid $10,000 for the house back in 1956. Yeah, I didn't know that our house was small until I was probably in the 3rd grade, and a girl on the bus on the way home, I still remember her name was Becky Polk, and she lived in another neighborhood, and she's like, "Oh, that's where you live? Well, your house is small." I'm like, I don't know. I've never even thought about it. Yeah. Where we live.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go to the next one. Let's get to see Bugsy right here. So that's Bugsy. He always wore the Cubs jackets.
So Dad was hardcore Cubs fan. Well, first about the name Bugsy, I don't really know why I started calling him Bugsy, but I did when I was, I don't know, 3rd, 4th grade, and it just stuck. Yeah. Everybody, all my friends call him Bugsy. Up until Dad passed away, my friends at church now call him Bugsy. My kids, that was his grandpa name. But Dad always had a Cubs jacket on. He was a huge Cubs fan. We got cable back in the early 80s. And in our area, you either like the Reds or you like the Braves or you like the Cubs because they
Yeah.
were on TV every day. So
Yep.
we really started following the Cubs, and that's Dad with, I think that's Ernie Banks on the left, and in the middle is Don Sutton, and on the right, I think that's Johnny Mize on the right.
Okay.
And we'll get into it a little bit, but I kind of started getting out of collecting when I was probably 20, 21, and Dad he kind of kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I didn't mention, I'm gonna break in real quick.
Yeah.
Guys, if you've seen, and if you want to go back, if you hadn't seen it, go back and watch it. But I did a video called The Greatest Baseball Trip Ever, and it talks about going to Wrigley Field when I was 20 years old. Tim is the guy that I went with. So if you go back, watch that and the whole story, that's me and Tim experiencing all those things together. So go back and check that out if you like this. But go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you off right there.
So I started getting into baseball cards, and would go to the drugstore with my mom, or we'd go to the grocery store, and started just buying packs and opening packs and looking into them. And I remember my dad, you have to remember, like Tony said, we had what we needed, but we didn't have a lot, when things are just different now than the way they were back then. People were a little bit more, I don't want to sound like an old man here, but a little bit more frugal. And I remember Dad saying, now we're not going to go crazy with this baseball card buying. Okay. And he set a limit. It was something like $5 a week or $2 a week. It was something very, very low. But the funny thing was, Dad, somehow, I don't remember exactly how Dad got into it, but once he got into it with me, we didn't spend exorbitant amounts of money, but those limits were, they went out the window.
Yeah.
And we were off and running from there.
He was stealing money out of another kitty to do that.
Yeah, he probably was. Yeah.
So you want to go to the next one?
Yep.
All right.
So back in Nashville, back in the 80s, and maybe it was this way in other cities, but there was always, I say always, there was some kind of event in town, whether it was a golf tournament, whether it was somebody signing autographs at a mall, they were making an appearance for something, but there were a lot of people kind of from the golden age of baseball and other sports that would be in Nashville at these events, and they would just, be there doing their thing, and they would sign autographs. So the first one that I remember going to, and I don't think Dad went to this with me because I think it was during the week, but there's a musician. I think he was a pianist in country music and also in popular music, named Floyd Kramer. And Floyd Kramer had this golf tournament. If anybody's watching from the Nashville area, that's Harpeth Hills Golf Course, a public course, and signing autographs. Or playing. They weren't signing autographs per se. They were just playing in this golf tournament. But on the far left, you can see Roger Maris.
Yeah, I'll pull that
in the blue pants and and then in the red, in solid red, that's Stan Musial. So, the other thing, the way you would find out about this stuff, of course, there was no internet back then, so you had to be paying attention and on top of things with the news, the sportscast, and reading the Tennessean, reading the newspaper every single day. And my dad would just scour that, looking for these types of things. And at this particular event was where we met Roger Maris and Stan Musial. I didn't send you a picture. Well, I don't have it anymore. So Stan Musial, I think I have a picture of him sitting on a golf cart signing a baseball. He was so nice. I hate the Cardinals because we're Cubs fans, but Stan Musial was so nice, and I got a couple of things signed by him. He signed a baseball, and I actually gave that baseball about 2 or 3 months ago to my son. Just got married, and the guy who married he and his wife now is a teacher at Harding University. and where they go to school or went to school. And he's a big Cardinals fan. So I gave him that Stan Musial ball for being such a good influence on my son. And I kind of wish I had the ball back now.
Yeah, now you're having FOMO. You're missing it.
Yeah. So anyway, but he was super nice. Maris, I don't remember a ton about him. But
He had the haircut though. Look at that.
He had the buzz cut. There's another story about him later. But he had the buzz cut. My dad was a huge Roger Maris fan because he liked the Yankees. He liked that golden era. And we actually started working on a full base card run of Roger Maris cards.
Mm-hmm.
And that rookie, of course, none of this was graded until after my dad passed away. But we got that rookie at a show that Dad looked long and hard for. And my dad was really big on eye appeal. Eye appeal was everything.
Yep.
And that one's not centered great, but you know, if you look at enough of those, it's hard to find that card centered. Mm-hmm. And we wound up, I'm almost through now with, after Dad passed away, I found his stash of Maris cards, and he was missing 3 or 4 cards, and I'm almost finished now. I need one more. I need a 1965 Topps Roger Maris. If anybody's watching and has one with good eye appeal and you want to get rid of it, let me know, or let Tony know.
Yeah. Or just reply to the video.
Hey, you can do that too. Yeah. But Maris was it was really cool to meet somebody like that. And even though I didn't see him and Mantle play, you know, now can you tell what the date is on that picture, Tony?
It's 1984.
So I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm 15 years old and I've been collecting 2 years, and I've met Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, and Stan Musial.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So you remember your dad's reaction when he met those guys? Was he like shaky, or because your dad would get emotional?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he would. He was, like I said, he wasn't there when we met them.
Oh, your mama had you. Your dad was at work.
Yeah, he was at work. And but whenever we would go and we would meet guys, Dad would always get nervous and he would get shaky. Yes. Yes.
Awesome. You want to go to the next guy?
Sure.
All right. So
we're kind of starting to get into autographs at this point. And to my knowledge, we hadn't been to, as best as I can recall, all the shows that we had been to at this point were all in Nashville. And in the really early 80s, there weren't a ton of shows in Nashville. It kind of exploded like mid 80s. There were some guys that started having big shows with Hall of Famers in all the time. There was the flea market down at the fairgrounds, but it wasn't great.
No.
And there was a card show at Harding Mall, like every 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And we started getting, I can't remember if Beckett magazine had already started then, but Dad found a way to, somewhere he was checking on shows that were in other cities. And a show popped up that was in Knoxville. And we went to it, and Brooks Robinson was there. Willie Stargell was there. And Jesse Barfield that played for the Blue Jays. And I want to say that there was no charge for autographs. I'm not certain about that, but it was like at a high school in a gym. I still remember it was raining. Got up early that Saturday morning and drove there. Dad couldn't wait to meet Brooks Robinson, because I'm thinking this was the first time that Dad met one of these guys.
Oh,
he had met the other guys, didn't meet Mantle, didn't meet Maris, didn't meet Musial. And we went in, and there weren't a ton of people there, you know, and I don't really know why. If it was because these guys were so sort of readily accessible, you know, or maybe they didn't promote it, but Brooks was just sitting there at a table, and I remember how nice he was, and he made conversation with me. And Dad, he would, from that point on, whenever we would go to a show, or if we met somebody at a golf tournament or wherever, Dad would take a picture of me and, whoever the person was signing the autographs. I wish we had. I don't have any pictures. We never took a picture of me and Dad in the person. I don't have a single one. Man, I wish I'd give anything.
For y'all young dads, don't make that mistake. Make sure you get the pictures with your kid.
Yep.
To freeze that moment in time. But anyway.
So then what Dad would do, because you can see that this picture's autographed, he asked Brooks if I printed this, once we take this to the drugstore, when you send the film off and you don't know what kind of picture you're going to get until a week later. But could you give me an address where I could mail this picture to? And if I did, would you sign it and send it back? And there you go. He did. To Tim, my best, Brooks Robinson. So he signed it. Dad sent him that, and he signed it and sent it back to us. And I've got a binder here. Dad saved all of the pictures, and they're in this.
It's a treasure trove. Everybody you met.
Oh, wow. And I actually opened it up. That was just luck. There's the Brooks Robinson picture, but everybody that we met, and there's a ton of these in here where we printed the picture out. And there's Willie Stargell. That was the same show.
So let me get this straight.
Yep.
So your dad's standing there and it has a piece of paper, and he gets Brooks Robinson just to write his address on it.
I guess. Yeah.
Your dad, man, he was awesome.
I mean, now, and that's just how different people are, because nobody would give you their address now. They just wouldn't. They just wouldn't do that. Everything is so corporate and cookie cutter, and
well, you don't know. You got some kind of screwball's going to come to your house and try to kill you or something.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts people. So
and then the other thing is, back in the day, all of the card holders were these plexiglass screw downs. So they've been in there. I mean, they've been in there since right after that show.
But those 3 cards right there, y'all got autographed at that show.
Yeah. Yes.
So you remember when you and I met Brooks Robinson at another show when we were a little older? I went with you and your dad, and Brooks Robinson was sitting there, and I said, "That's a nice ring, Mr. Robinson." And he slid his World Series ring off, put it on my finger, and said, "Stand over here beside me and look at it as long as you want." And he went on signing with people, and everybody was just looking at me like, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome." And I stood there forever just checking out Brooks Robinson's World Series ring. That dude was awesome.
Yeah, I've got a similar story to that. But yeah, he was like immediately like your favorite uncle or somebody that you would just sit down next to at church and just start talking to. He was great.
Yeah.
So he was so awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great first experience to really light the fire of, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You're thinking everybody's going to be like that.
Yes.
So we're about to transition to the next one.
We're thinking everybody's going to be like that.
So here's the next one.
So before I was a Cubs fan, I said everybody in Nashville, you either like the Reds or the Cubs or the Braves. I guess there's some Cardinals fans here too. Yeah. But this was mid-70s, man, the Big Red Machine. And I was a Cincinnati Reds fan. My best friend, when I was like 6 or 7, lived 2 doors up. And we would go out in the backyard and throw and play wiffle ball. And I would always be Johnny Bench, and he would be Pete Rose. And we would do head first dives, just running across the backyard and crazy stuff like little boys do. But Johnny Bench, he was my guy.
So explain this picture right here.
You
ain't got to tell the story behind it yet, but just kind of tell the picture.
Yeah, he was my favorite player. So the picture on the bottom right, that's the door to my bedroom at mom and dad's house. And that's a full player run of all of Bench's cards, except for, I don't think the 1970 is in there, which I'm not sure why. Maybe we didn't have it yet because Dad had a 1970 that I still have. And then the 68 rookie is just above that, sitting on top of a dresser.
Yeah.
So that's also at mom and dad's house. So this would have been like 1984, and another golf tournament is coming up. And we're thinking, hey, Brooks was great, or Maris was great, and Musial was great, and we're on a really good run. We're going to go to this golf tournament and get Bench's autograph. He's there playing. And again, it was a weekday, and my dad was working. So I go with my mom. And, I'm just a kid. I'm 84. I've been 15. So I took 2 balls, 2 cards, and an 8x10. So, okay, that's probably a little much to just hit somebody with to sign. But again, it was just pure excitement. That's all it was. I wasn't trying to resell anything. So I get there, and they hadn't started playing yet. And he's standing there talking to his buddies, sunny day. I'm like, man, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm so nervous. And I walk over there, and I said, hey, Mr. Bench, I'm a huge fan. Love the Reds. Could you sign this for me? And here I would just about bet you that we'll take a little sidebar, that this is the box I had the stuff in. So my dad worked for a printing company, and this is Kodak, some kind of Kodak product, but he was always bringing these boxes home, and they were perfect for cards. All the scribbles that are on here, this is the box that whenever we would go somewhere to get autographs at a show, Dad would always make sure that the person that was signing would use his pen. And right before he would hand the person his pen, he would kind of scribble on here his initials to make sure that the pen was good and it wasn't dried. But I'm pretty sure that I had that day the 8x10 and the cards in the box and the 2 balls, and just kind of handed it to him. And Bench looks at me and kind of looked at the stuff, and he said, what do you think I'm doing, kid? Going to send you to college? Like I was going to get that stuff signed and then sell it. Absolutely crushed me. Yeah. I mean, I didn't start crying. I'm 15 years old, but it was embarrassing for one thing, because it was in front of some other guys, and it was almost like if you went and sat on Santa Claus's lap and Santa really said, you're not getting anything this year, kid. It's like you're not expecting it. So I think he did sign 1 card. I think he signed his 69 Topps card. But it didn't matter at that point. I turned around and I walked back over where my mom was, because she didn't walk over there with me when I did that. So I walked back over to Mom, and Mom's like, what happened?
She could see it on your face.
Yeah. And I told her. And man, she didn't care if he was the greatest catcher of all time. 10 years off winning back-to-back World Series, if he's standing over there top playing, with his golfing buddies, because he was still been, in shape and, athletic looking at that stage of his life. Mom didn't care. And she went over there and kind of tried to explain what happened, and that big risk. And he just wasn't having it. And man, I still remember my mom, who's like 5'8". You just see the back of her head, and I could see Bench's, like Bench's face in the back of Mom's head. And Mom was just like letting him absolutely have it. So So go home and tell my dad, and it's probably a blessing that my dad was not there that day, because I'm not sure what would have happened. So go home, tell Dad, and Dad pins this letter.
Types it
On
a typewriter.
Typed. Yeah, he probably had his secretary at work do it, but yes, typed. And he goes through and he says, my name's Harold Kaler. I was reading this just a second ago when Tony and I were kind of getting ready to record this. And Dad says he's 49 years old, which is it just seems crazy because I'm older than that now.
Yeah.
But he goes through and he's telling Bench that, hey, I'm, just a fan of the Big Red Machine. And if you look down in the letter 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, where he says, not only did this embarrass him, but hurt his feelings and destroyed his image of Johnny Bench, his lifetime hero. And for your further information, my son and I do not collect autographs and cards for resale, but for our own pleasure and enjoyment. That's 100% true. We never talked about, I cannot remember a single discussion about, hey, let's buy that card. It's worth some money.
Yeah.
It just, or it's worth more now.
Yep.
It just never came up.
Yep.
That's not why we were doing it. We were just looking back now as a father and all the time that I spent with my own kids doing stuff. It was just a mechanism for, sure, we loved cards and we both loved baseball, but it was just a mechanism and the thing that we were doing to be together. It just so happens it was baseball cards, and it just made it even cooler.
Yeah.
So Dad writes him this letter.
And he didn't sign it Bugsy. He signed it Harold.
Yeah, he signed it Harold. He said it'd have been something if he'd have signed it Bugsy. And Dad says at the end, if your secretary reads your mail, I hope that she makes a strong effort to get this to you. So he sends this letter, and then he also go back. Can you go back to the pictures?
Yeah.
He also sends the pictures, so Bench can see,
to prove to him
my collection, the Bench rookie, the TV. That's the TV in our living room. If you notice, sidebar, if you notice on top of the TV, the little box in the back, that's the cable box. That's for changing the channel on cable.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, Dad, if it was an intimidation tactic, why he sends the flex picture of me at like 130 pounds with no shirt on. So let's see, Dad. Okay, so Dad sent that on the 25th. I've still got the envelope. The postmark is November. I don't know if you can see that. November 13th of 84. So it was he answered in like a month and a half.
Wow. And
he sends the letter back. He sends the pictures back. And on one of the pictures he wrote, man, he smudged it. But it says great collecting, Johnny Bench. And then on the letter, go back to the letter, Tony. So Bench basically, he tries to explain himself, and he for about the first half, he starts off, he says, sorry for the embarrassment. And he goes on to say, I came to Nashville to play golf and to relax, and I knew I was going to have to sign autographs and pictures, which I did. He said I did do that. And I think he says that he should do a better job at those kinds of things. And he also says that it's turned into quite a business. So many times he signed autographs, and then he hears people say right after that it's worth more now that he signed it. Yeah. And he said that puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, including his. And I'm thinking, okay, he's sort of saying that's almost like the old, if I offended you, I'm sorry, the non-apology apology.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he says, well, I did all that. I signed your card. I took a picture, which I don't think I have a picture from there. And he said, I think one is plenty unless people can give me respect as well. I'm sorry that you didn't make your son understand that. So
he blamed your dad.
Yeah, he blamed my dad. And then he did. I think you have a picture of that. He did send this to
Yeah.
you. It says, catch you later. So I met him.
And also, he signed the picture of y'all's TV. It says "Great Collection, Johnny Bench" on it.
Yeah.
So he signed several things.
And
so, in a way, he made an effort.
He did. So, he did. I kind of forget. I honestly. So after this happened, even after he sent this back, I mean, the cards came off the door. They came out of the holder. But I still liked him. Yeah. It was almost like, your best friend that, like if you did something to me and, I'd forgive you.
Yeah.
And boy, I tell you what, my mom never did. Dad kind of did. Dad kind of forgave him.
Jane didn't play if you hurt her son. Jane was coming after you.
So a really interesting thing happened, though. We met him 2 more times after that. He was in, I don't know if you remember, but there was a couple of years at the Nashville Sounds Stadium. They did a fantasy camp.
Yeah.
And I think they still do those periodically. And Bench was there for fantasy camp. And I took some stuff and I don't remember if it was just one. If I
you weren't going to hand him 5 things.
But I got his autograph there. He came over, to the edge of the field and got his autograph there. And Dad was standing up in the stands and took the picture. I think that was the 3rd time that we met him. The 2nd time, he was at a show. It was one of Ray Dunning's shows at the Sheraton. And that probably would have only been a year or 2 after this incident happened. And went through the line, which had to pay now.
Yeah.
And whatever it was, I got him to, I put it down there and he looked up. And when he looked at me, he kind of paused and he looked at me like, I remember who you are.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything and maybe he really didn't remember me, but it was just odd.
I guarantee he did. I guarantee you he did because he knew going to Nashville he might run into you again, and then you were there. So
it was just like one of the. And I remember looking at him, and I'm just thinking, it's okay, it's all right. It's all right. So he's still that soured me a little bit, but he's still one of my favorite players. Not my mom's, but mine.
Yeah. Your mom still wasn't gonna buy us cards. So you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so this would have been in the same time frame, and this is when we're making some road trips, right? We've been to Knoxville. There's one coming up later where we went to Cincinnati, but this is actually at Rickwood Field in Birmingham, and this is when the Birmingham Barons, they were still playing at Rickwood. And we had never been to Rickwood before. This trip was one of the things that my dad, if we started reminiscing about, as Dad would call it, baseball carding, kind of like it was a verb, he would talk about this trip. If we were going to the beach and we went through Birmingham, he was going to bring up when we stopped when we went to this show in Rickwood. And for those of you that haven't been to Rickwood, it's basically just in this neighborhood in Birmingham. You're kind of driving through just like a retail area in not a great section of Birmingham, and you make a right turn and you go through this neighborhood and all of a sudden there's the ballpark, and it's literally like you're walking back in time. The front facade is it's giving me cold goosebumps now talking about it. But you went in and it was just awesome.
I mean, the Negro League players played there. Satchel Paige, Willie Mays played there when he was with the Negro
Yeah.
League team. And then, of course, the Birmingham Barons, Ruth would have come through there,
Yeah.
barnstorming. I mean, so yeah, very historic field. It's where the Major League Baseball played last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, are they doing it again this year? I don't remember, but
I don't think so. But so we
yeah.
stopped. So I think it was this after they had Major League Baseball had played there this most recent time. Lee and I were on the way back from the beach, and I said, "We got to stop at Rickwood." And I think Dad had this was probably last summer, and Dad had just passed away, and I'm like, "We got to stop there." And I told her about this trip. And that room where he is still there. It doesn't look like that anymore, but the door that you go through to go to that room, it was, I mean, it just remembered it. It was in the brain. So Warren Spahn was there, and we took those 2 cards, and similar to your story about Brooks Robinson, I go in, and there, of course, he was there signing. There was a game going on. Right. I have no idea why he was there, what the deal was, but it was obviously set up ahead of time because we had driven the 2 hours to get his autograph. And we're talking, and he had on this, really cool ring, and I'm just staring at it. And either me or my dad asked him, what it was, and he said, "Well, that's my Cy Young ring. You want to check it out?" And same thing as you, he took it off, and he just sat it down there on the table and just started talking to other people. And yeah. I'm like, and I remember Bugsy said, "Pick it up and put it on." But it was, I think the most striking thing about all of that to me is how he valued Warren Spahn. It was very obvious he valued people over things, because he didn't say, just stare at the ring, they're going to run off with it. I don't know if it was so much he trusted us, because he didn't know us from Adam, but that's just who he was. He just didn't think anything about it,
Yeah.
And it was that's one of our best memories. It was so awesome. And,
so I'm guessing if that was during the game and you're in some room, there probably wasn't many people in there, was there?
No, there weren't. There weren't many people at all.
So you didn't feel rushed?
No, he was so awesome. And then that's another. I'm trying to. I don't know if that's the only time we saw him, Tony, and if Dad. Another instance of Dad asking him for his address to get that picture signed, because that's another picture that's signed.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the only picture that I have of me or Dad with Warren Spahn. So I'm thinking that's probably the only time. Dad was just, he would ask anybody anything. He just didn't care.
He just looked at everybody like they were people like him, even though he'd get nervous, and he knew they were somebody he had watched on TV growing up, and he knew how great they were.
Yep.
He still thought the best of people until they proved wrong. And so that's going to be the last story, but don't turn it off yet. Hear me out. This is a tease. There's going to be other stories about your dad talking to people on the phone and old school stuff. We're going to do another one of these, and people sending expensive cards now I'm not going to tell them what card, but how many cards was this? Like 20?
20. It was a stack.
A stack of cards. This collector sent them a stack of cards and said, "Look through these cards and pick the one you like, and then send the rest back."
Yep.
That's how trusting people were. And we'll tell that story. There's another story about famous basketball cards and building sets, and a baseball bat that's been around the world. More pictures, more stories. But we want to do this because, number one of the stories you just got through telling was the one about bench. And you said, we did this not to make money. It was about the memories and spending time together. So many times today, with the way our hobby is structured, that is getting lost because it's about breaking packs, finding a shiny card that might make you an instant millionaire. And that it's all about money. And you're taking the base cards and you're throwing them in the trash. What would Bugsy say about throwing base cards in the trash?
He'd be in a tizzy.
He'd be digging them out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a whole different world. So my point is, I'm not saying people aren't still having these experiences with their kids, but I'm saying please don't lose this aspect of it, because this is the backbone. Going to games with your sons or daughters and or your grandkids, which I can't wait for, to get Oakley to a ball game one day. All those things, that's what baseball and other sports are about. It's about the memories, it's about the experiences and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to keep talking about this, and hopefully it's something people will enjoy. We've got dozens of these stories, and this has been awesome. I've enjoyed talking tonight, man.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun trip down memory lane, and kind of in a way, whenever you're telling stories about about a loved one that's not here anymore, it's like they're kind of still here, and you kind of keep them alive.
Yeah.
And Dad would be we've talked about all these stories that I told so many times, and he would just, I could just hear him laughing right now. He'd be cackling.
Yeah. So your dad, at the end of his life, the last several years, he lived there in that room you're in right now. That was his bedroom. And he had a bookcase and all these cards and photos and balls and he had a whole bookcase full of them. He had stuff leaning up against the bookcase. And when I'd go over and, hang out, and I'd go and visit your daddy, we'd talk about some of those items. And so that he saved those for a reason. It wasn't because he thought he was going to be rich one day. It's because every one of those items brought back a memory he had with his son.
Yep. 100%.
Yep.
100%.
Well, man, thanks. We're gonna stop it right now, but there's gonna be part 2 and part 3 and part 4. So this is for me and you, and it's to honor your dad and honor that memory and to keep it alive. So I hope people enjoy it too. But in the end, this has been awesome doing it with you, man.
Yeah, thank you for asking me to do it. I was a little hesitant in the beginning. You kind of been after me for a while.
Yeah,
to do this.
Well, last year at the Nashville, we were sitting there at the YouTube get together, and we were talking about it. And I was like, "Man, you can do a channel, I can do a channel, and maybe we'll do these combo things." And you never started a channel, and that's cool. I did, and I jumped all in. But here we are. This is the first one, so it's pretty awesome.
All right,
brother.
Thank you.
Peace out. We'll do it again next time.
All right, we'll see you.
See you, buddy.